If you grew up watching cartoons, Peppa Pig was probably a big part of your childhood. Or maybe it still is. But have you ever stopped to pay attention to all the little or big mistakes that pop up in the episodes of this super famous pink pig? Let's start with a super strange mistake in the episode Masks. In it, Madame Gazelle is leading the class and asks the kids to make their own masks. So far, so good. But when we look at the clock on the wall, it shows exactly 9 a.m. The problem is, just a few seconds later, while she's explaining about the materials and the kids are getting ready to start, that same clock mysteriously jumps to 10 a.m. All of this in a matter of seconds. Did you notice this time travel that happened in the classroom? It's as if Madame Gazelle has a superpower to speed up time in front of her students. I think any student or teacher would love to have that power to make class end faster. Don't you agree? Get ready, because today, we're going to list 15 absurd mistakes that probably went unnoticed, even by the biggest fans of the Pink Pig. Put on your golden boots and join us to dive deeper into the fascinating world of Peppa Pig. Speaking of mysterious disappearances, there's another bizarre mistake in the episode Fairy Tales. During lunch, we see Grandpa Pig placing a dish full of potatoes right in the middle of the kitchen table. There are potatoes everywhere. What happens next is almost like magic. When the scene shows the table again, we see that all the potatoes have been served onto the characters' plates. But guess what? The dish and all the extra potatoes, there were plenty, have completely disappeared. Could it be that Mr. Wolf, who was sitting at the table, was so hungry he devoured the dish too? We can't know for sure, but it's definitely strange. To make the story even more fantastic, in the same episode, right after the potato disappearance, there's another funny detail. The forks that were in the adults' hands also vanish. It seems like Peppa really is in a fairy tale where objects disappear out of nowhere. How about we call this story The Tale of the Ghost Potatoes? Now, rewinding a bit in the same episode, we see the Pig family walking to Grandma Pig's house. On the way, they cross paths with Mr. Wolf, who is wearing his usual shirt and purple tie. However, when the Pig family arrives at Grandma Pig's house and everyone sits down for lunch, we notice that, mysteriously, Mr. Wolf's tie and shirt have disappeared. Without any explanation, he's suddenly missing the full outfit he had on moments earlier. So, does Mr. Wolf have a magical outfit that vanishes at any moment? Now let's talk about one of the most absurd mistakes in Peppa Pig, which appears in the episode Nursery Rhymes. When the kids are leaving school to sing Danny Dog's famous song, they line up. You can clearly see that, in order. There's Danny, Peppa, Pedro, and then 4 other friends of Peppa, before George. But right after Danny starts singing and the line shows up again, something really strange happens. George, who was way behind before, now magically appears right behind Susie and Pedro, as if he had cut the line. If you're as confused as we are by this time, jump, comment, "What?" And maybe one day the creators of Peppa will explain all of this to us better. Let's start with a mistake from the episode Parachute Jump, when Madame Gazelle, along with several children, goes to Mummy Pig's house to congratulate her for agreeing to skydive to raise money for the school. We see Mummy Pig standing alone at her front door. All good so far. But suddenly, after she accepts the challenge, in the blink of an eye, all her family members, including Daddy Pig, who hadn't appeared up until that moment in the episode, show up behind her. Clearly, logic isn't a priority in Peppa Pig episodes, where even the characters appear and disappear without warning. Now, going back to the episode Nursery Rhymes, we see Madame Gazelle with her guitar, singing with the children. But when we take a look at the classroom, we notice that the window with the numbers on it is a fair distance from the teacher and the kids. The issue is, in a close-up scene of Madame Gazelle's head, the corner of the window suddenly appears as if it's right next to the teacher, which doesn't make any sense considering it was further away in the previous scene. This perspective mistake is one of those details that can easily be missed, but once noticed, you can't help but wonder, how did that end up there? Another intriguing mistake can be found in the episode Masks, which we talked about at the beginning of the video. In this episode, we see letter blocks sitting in Peppa's classroom. When the kids are making their masks, these blocks are placed on the corner of the classroom counter, along with a toy and a cup full of colored pencils. However, after all the kids finish making their masks, something strange happens. The blocks and the toy magically change places. Now, the toy is at the edge of the counter, while the blocks have mysteriously moved to the other side. This continuity error may seem small, but our sharp eyes couldn't let it slip by. Still in the same episode, another mistake that catches the eye is how the scene changes. At the start of the class, the children are sitting on the floor while Madame Gazelle talks about the masks they're going to make. But, like magic, we suddenly see tables appear out of nowhere, along with all kinds of materials for the kids to use to make their masks. And all of this happens in the same space, as we can still see the same clock and the shelf with the letter blocks in the background. Seriously, this makes no sense at all. Now let's talk about a mistake that involves more logic than animation or continuity. In the episode where Danny Dog celebrates his dad's birthday, we see that he gets a boat ride as a gift. The family and friends are excited, and they all hop into the car to head to the canal where they'll take the boat. The detail that doesn't make any sense is that when they leave the house, the front door of the dog family's home is left wide open. Now imagine if, when they returned, the house wasn't filled with ducks and other animals that had wandered in through the open door. Was this a careless mistake or an attempt to show they really trust their neighborhood? The questions remain. And if you've made it this far, congratulations, because it means you're just as big a Peppa Pig fan as we are. And if that's true, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. Now, let's talk about the episode Miss Rabbit's Taxi. In this episode, we notice a very curious continuity mistake. When the pig family calls for a taxi, Miss Rabbit is working at the supermarket as a cashier, and we see 3 people in line waiting: Mrs. Dog, Mr. Fox, and Mrs. Cow. So far, so good. But after Miss Rabbit goes and comes back a few times, upon her return to the supermarket, the number of customers in the line increases drastically. And the most curious thing is that Mrs. Pony is now standing in front of Mrs. Cow, as if she cut in line. Could it be that we have a new queue jumper in the world of Peppa, following in George's footsteps from the Nursery Rhymes episode? It sure seems that way. In the episode where the pig family goes to Grandpa and Granny Pig's house for pizza, we notice a funny detail involving little George. He really loves pizza, but apparently he's not that fond of greens and vegetables. When he's served a plate with leaves, 2 slices of tomato, and a slice of cucumber, his face says it all. But later, when we see his plate again, one of the tomato slices is missing. Instead of 2, there's now only 1 slice left. Did George end up eating the tomato when no one was looking? Maybe he likes veggies more than we think. Now, let's talk about a mistake in the episode where the pig family goes to the swimming pool. When the rabbit family arrives to join the fun, Peppa and George are already in the water. We can clearly see George near one of the corners of the pool by the ladder. But when Peppa greets Rebecca and Richard Rabbit, magically, the 2 little rabbits are already in the pool. And even stranger, they're further from the ladder than Peppa and George were just seconds earlier. Only after swimming a bit do they get closer to Peppa and George. This change in position doesn't make any sense, but maybe it's just another mystery in the world of Peppa. Still talking about this same pool episode, we see Peppa and Rebecca taking part in a little swimming race. As soon as they start, George and Richard are left behind in the pool. As expected, what doesn't make sense is that when Peppa and Rebecca reach the edge of the pool, George and Richard are already there, waiting for the 2 girls with watering cans full of water to splash them. How could the 2 have swum so fast, overtaken the girls without anyone noticing, and filled a watering can in record time? This is definitely one of the strangest mysteries in Peppa Pig that I've ever seen. Continuing in the same pool episode, there's another detail that might go unnoticed, but once you see it, it's quite intriguing. From the start, we see that the locker room doors follow a specific color sequence: blue, green, yellow, and red. But by the end of the episode, it seems the animators completely forgot this order. Now the first door is red, followed by yellow, green, and blue. It's almost as if we're looking at the doors in a mirror, with everything reversed. Another example of how continuity doesn't always hold up in Peppa Pig. Despite all these mistakes we found in Peppa Pig, it doesn't take away from the love we have for this animated series. In fact, finding these details just makes us enjoy it even more, as there's always something new to pay attention to. If you also had fun with this list, we've got a little gift for you. 2 videos are popping up on your screen. Pick one and keep hanging out with us. See you in the next video.